Thank you for joining us in finding God in the world of video games. I suppose I always knew that this day would eventually come. That doesn't mean I was ready for it. It was too soon, and it seemed completely unnecessary. So let me set the setting for you. So I'm sitting there, minding my own business, scrolling through the Xbox Game Pass update for that week, just to see what new stuff was there, maybe download something that I'm probably never going to get around to playing, but I like knowing it's there in case I want to, and then boom. As I was scrolling through all of the newly available titles, I got down to that little category that is my least favorite, the Leaving Soon category. And there it was, sitting so nonchalantly as if, it wasn't about to ruin my day completely. There was listed Moving Out, which was a game that I truly enjoyed in the little bit of time that we got to play it. And now it was going to be gone before I was ready to say goodbye.
I mean, we weren't even remotely close to finishing.
We had a long way to go.
We got maybe 4 levels, if that.
I thought there could have been 5. Count the
4.
tutorial.
Okay, if you count the tutorial. But, I mean, we didn't stop playing it because we didn't like it.
We love it.
We just, got caught up with other games, and now we won't have time to finish it because, it left without any warning for us.
And you don't get a lot of warning on these things.
No.
And
they
Game
can be,
Pass,
not even a couple of weeks?
Yeah, well, not even that. So, and Game Pass is great. You got new games popping up all the time to take the place of the games that are leaving, and maybe nobody else even noticed that this game was gone. But I did. And that same week, I also saw that another series of games that I had just barely started to get into playing the new versions of, the Kingdom Hearts titles, were also leaving the service, and I ran out of time with those as well.
Part of what makes Game Pass, the service of it, so great is that the membership gives access to so many different unique and diverse gaming experiences, from older classic games to even some of the newest releases. But with this access also comes at a cost, and I am not just talking about the monthly, membership cost.
No, I mean, obviously you're going to pay some money for this. It's not free, But the Game Pass service is a harsh reminder that I do not own any of these games. My ability to play them is completely predicated on the deal that was made between the publisher of the title and Microsoft, of course, the company that is hosting the service.
Right. And once that time has expired, the game will disappear from the library with little to no warning, which is a sad but necessary part of the process. While part of the access is probably intended to provide enough time with the game to make a full purchase of the title, the reality is we don't have an unlimited gaming budget.
No, and if you do, you're welcome to gift us a copy of Moving Out. We'll happily take it. But the reality is, I simply can't afford to purchase every single one of these games simply to continue playing them. I mean, the whole reason I have the Game Pass service is to play all of the games that I couldn't afford to play otherwise. So for me, most of the time when they are gone from the Game Pass service, they are gone for me. And I have to endure the melancholy and painful operation of deleting them from my hard drive to make space for whatever is coming next, because the path behind me has been sealed off, emotionlessly, resolutely, and with finality. And now this particular video is going to get a little personal for us, so you're missing some of our trademark humor. Well, it's really not that good anyway. But if you're missing that, this one's going to have a little bit of a different tone, because on this one I'm going to share about someone that I have personally lost. But before we get there, we do have to understand a few fundamental but inconvenient truths. First, similar to the Game Pass service, we all enter into this life at different points and for different periods of time. And we're all existing on borrowed time from day one of our entry into this community. You see that in Hebrews 9:27, where it says, "It is appointed for men to die once, but after the judgment."
But even though we understand this as a concept, the reality of loved ones being removed from our access on this plane of existence is never easy to process or accept. Sometimes we can see this exit coming from, a long way, and other times it simply occurs without any warning, providing no time for preparation or negotiation.
And in those stunning and tragic moments, the first thing we may do is blame ourselves for not prioritizing them when we had the chance, thinking of all the things that we left incomplete or unsaid, maybe things unfinished. The pain of loss is hard enough, and when it's compounded with all of the regrets of what was missed and what could have been, we can fall into a vortex that can feel impossible to escape from. So since these painful, premature goodbyes are not going to end, it's time for some answers to our moving out predicament.
In 2 Samuel 12, we find the tragic ending of one of the darkest chapters in the entire Bible, the death of the son born of the affair of King David and Bathsheba. Both David and Bathsheba had not only committed adultery against their respective spouses, but David had further doubled down on his sin through a tangled web of plotting and then committing murder to, cover it up. In case you didn't know that story.
It's not a great chapter by any means. So David finally owns up to his exponentially growing slate of horrific sins. And we find that the price that will be paid is not paid by him, but by the child that was conceived. So in 2 Samuel chapter 12, we'll read 13 through 19. David said to Nathan, this is the prophet who had confronted David, I sinned against the Lord. And Nathan responded to him, the Lord has put away your sin. You shall not die. However, because by this deed you have given great occasion to the enemies of the Lord to blaspheme him, the child who is born to you shall surely die. And then Nathan departed his house. The Lord struck the child that Bathsheba was bearing to David, and it became ill. And this is kind of the most tragic part of it to me. David pleaded with God for the child, and he fasted. He went in and laid all night on the ground. And the elders of his house arose, went to him, and they tried to raise him up from the ground, but he wouldn't. He wouldn't eat with them, nothing. And at the seventh day, the whole week of him refusing to get up, refusing to eat, it came to pass the child died. And the servants of David were afraid to tell him that the child was dead. He said, look, when the child was alive, we spoke to him and he wouldn't listen to us, he wouldn't eat, he wouldn't get up. What is he going to do when we tell him the child is dead? He may do himself harm. So when David saw that his servants were whispering, David's a pretty savvy guy, he could read between the lines, and he perceived that the child had passed. David said to his servants, is the child dead? And they said, he is dead. Now, I want to point something out that may not seem immediately obvious on the surface, because all the horror of David's crimes, and there were several within this entire circumstance, may have obscured something. The child that was lost was not only lost to the two guilty parties here, David and Bathsheba.
Right. This child also had, a grandfather, a grandmother, aunts, uncles, cousins, brothers, sisters. More people absorbed this loss than simply, the parents. People who had nothing to do with this cause of this loss were still impacted by the pain, the sadness, and the seemingly injustice of an innocent child being taken into eternity.
An entire family lost this unnamed child. And while we don't get any insight on how this impacted anyone other than the primary characters in the story, the emotions that we feel as humans have not changed over the centuries. But the first rays of sunshine emerging from the clouds of this horrible, tragic loss come from none other than the broken king himself. And we see that continue in verses 20 through 23. David arose from the ground. He washed and anointed himself, took a shower. He changed his clothes. He went into the house of the Lord and he worshiped God. And then he went to his house. And when he requested, they brought him food and he ate it. And his servants obviously were kind of confused. They said, what are you doing? You fasted and you wept for the child when he was alive. But when the child died, you got up, ate food. And David responded, and this is incredibly wise response. When the child was alive, I fasted and I wept. As I said, who can tell whether the Lord might be gracious to me and let the child live? But now that he is dead, why should I fast? Can I bring him back again? I shall go to him, but he shall not return to me. For all of his flaws, David understood that the same God that gives is also the God that takes away.
While that can be challenging to accept during our times of mourning and loss, the reason that David is able to move forward is because he understands that he is not moving away from the loss, but towards reunion with his child.
That's right. Every step from this point forward is a step closer to seeing his child again. And on the path between here and there, he still had a great many things to do, and an additional child to raise. Pretty important one. Named Solomon. Maybe you heard of him. You see that in verse 24. David comforted Bathsheba, his wife. He went into her, lay with her. She bore a son, called his name Solomon. The Lord loved him, and he sent word by the hand of Nathan the prophet, and he called his name Jedediah, because of the Lord. The same prophet, Nathan, who brought the dark and sad news of the impending loss of David's child, was also the messenger of good news. God could have chose anyone to deliver this, but he deliberately sent the exact same prophet who delivered the bad news. Why? Because just like the games that come and go from the Game Pass service, this is a two-way street.
Game Pass service is both the deliverer of all of the new, fresh games that, we look forward to playing, as well as the bearer of, bad tidings when it is time for one to go into the vault. Consider the words of Job as he endured the painful loss of all of his children he reinforces, and even his health.
So we see that in Job 2, 9 and 10. If anyone lost, Job lost. He lost so much, everything he had, except his wife, who then said this to him, "Do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die." Well, that's really not helpful advice, no matter how things are going. But Job spoke to her. He said, "You speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from God and not also accept adversity?" And then it says, "In all this Job did not sin with his lips." Like the games that I wish I had more time with before they disappear, we will always wish we had more time with those who we lose. But they are not gone. They are simply inaccessible to us right now, because they exist in a different place than we are currently occupying. We will experience a joyful reunion with them in due time. But first, we do have new missions to complete.
David had a future king to raise and prepared to take his place when he passed, and he had more enemies to battle to ensure his son would not have to face them in the future. Our loved ones completed their part of the story, even if that is hard for us to understand right now. But whether their time here was short or long, they have passed the torch to us to continue this relay race and keep the flame moving towards the next pair of hands to carry it.
It is right for us to mourn the loss of our loved ones, and that period of grief is going to be different for each of us as well. Death is not just some emotionless transition to eternity. Death is an enemy. As a matter of fact, according to 1 Corinthians, it's the final enemy to be destroyed. But the Lord, in his infinite mercy, continues to give us new adventures to take on and new people to invest into, so we can ensure that the legacy we were gifted with grows and continues into the next generation.
Our loved ones would never want us to remain in this place of absorbing their loss and regretting what we wish we could have done differently. They are watching us even now and cheering us on as we continue towards our finish line.
So I told you earlier that this one is personal. Well, here it is. Perhaps the greatest inspiration in my life was my grandmother. She believed in me and encouraged me from my childhood into my adulthood, through the innocence of my youth, through the myriad of sins and moral failures I had as an adult. Almost every memory I have of her was her listening to a sermon, reading the Bible, or providing love and support to her family. She was always quick with a hug, full of sunshine. And even now, I can't stop smiling when I think of her. She simply radiated joy. She was my biggest supporter. She never stopped seeing the potential in me, even when I made mistake after mistake after mistake. She never condemned me, even though I was constantly reaping the bitter fruit of the sins I had sown. And she spent her final years in constant pain. She suffered from many health issues, and the last time I spoke to her, I knew that she was reaching the end of her race, and for me, it was way too soon. I was still a complete mess personally. I was dealing with so many issues, and I wasn't even living for Christ at the time. She had believed that I would do things for the Lord with my life, and she passed without ever seeing it. She never saw any of it. She never saw any of this. And it breaks my heart. She never got to see me finally start to pull myself together. All the articles I've written, all the videos that we've recorded, all the ways I'm trying to step into what she always believed I would eventually become, and she wasn't here for any of it. And it breaks my heart because all I ever wanted to do was make her proud. I desperately wanted to be the man that she saw in me, even though the one that I saw in the mirror was nothing like it. And while I'm still in the process of becoming 1/10 of the person that she always thought I would be, she was removed too soon to even see the first step of the journey. So her loss, it does still haunt me. Not because she's gone. I know where she is, and that she's finally in a pain-free body. It hurts because of what I never got to show her, that she lit a torch inside of me that burned too late for her to see it.
Perhaps you have lost someone too soon, and you also feel that your times with them wasn't finished. I know exactly what you mean, but here's the secret that carries me even now. They're watching from the cloud of witnesses, which in Hebrews 12:1 says, right now.
My grandmother's cheering me on to finish what she started so many years ago. And while there are certainly still times that I feel her loss and I shed tears for the hugs I will not ever feel again on this side of heaven, I know what I need to do. I have to continue exploring new adventures and imparting everything I have been given to everyone that I can for as long as I will be here. My moving out game is out of the Game Pass service, and others have come to take its place. And I will play them. I will write about them. And I will continue to find God in the world of video games for as many years as the Lord gives me.
That is the encouragement that we want to leave you with today. Whoever you are mourning, whoever you are missing, and whatever you feel was left unsaid or undone, your adventure is not over either. Speak their name today, not in sadness, but in anticipation. I don't know when or why certain games come and go from the Game Pass, but I do know that it is inevitable. It just is. And we won't have all the answers to who we lose or why we lost them so soon or in the manner that we did. But we do have more to do.
Those that we lost are watching us, cheering for us, and if we follow the path of Christ, one day our joy will be complete, and we will see them again. So let's make them proud of what they invested into us. Let's run this race like the champions they always believed that we were. So this one is for you, Grandma James. I hope that I finally made you proud. I know I'm not half the man you always believed I would be, but I'm a million times better than the man I would be if it wasn't for you. I'm not moving on from you. I'm simply moving forward and carrying the torch that you gave me until it's time for me to pass it off